It's nice to see some visitors showing up post winter retreat. Although we had some visitors here in and out, it was pretty rare. And yeah, we've started our regular schedule again. It's been going for it's been going irregularly for the last 4 days. So the community, with my encouragement, jumped into morning and afternoon work periods so that we could demolish 4 kutis that we're replacing and prepare the sites for a contractor and for inspections and all kinds of things that are happening. And as one of the monastics remarked, it's a very good kind of work, but it's very tiring, but it's sort of also a good feeling of being tired. And it has been a marvel for me just seeing how well we've been working together, how harmonious, how easy the amount of injuries seem to have been few, although I think most of us have pretty achy muscles and tendons. But it's been quite a nice 3 or 4 days. I think it ended up being like 3.5 days, and we took down 3 small buildings, these small kutis, which I didn't anticipate would happen. Down to the ground, there's basically nothing left. And in certain ways, it's been a fair amount of fun. Lumpur has been talking about you can keep your mind on something when you're destroying it, and so that's been kind of our engagement, and quite a contrast from what we've been doing. Just kind of a sense of solitude that we've been having, most of us in the monastery. The last week that we were participating in the retreat, we all got together and engaged in a full schedule. And before that, it had been quite open. Just a couple of monastics carrying on the morning and evening pujas, and the lay support team that was here attending those pujas. And we have a reading every day, but other than that, it was just very open. And so coming into a contrasting situation like this, it can be quite a shock to the system. But one of the things that I'm marveling at is just how, although with the tiredness that's there doesn't seem to be this difficulty or dukkha. There doesn't seem, at least what appears on the surface. People are possibly being very restrained, but other than just being physically tired, it seems that people are enjoying themselves to a degree and not going too hard at the work. But then the amount that's getting accomplished is quite astonishing. And I think that is evident of just the cultivation that we've been engaging in these last 3 months. When you put a lot of time and effort into bringing the mind towards the present moment experience, towards the body, just breathing, life can become quite simple, and then it can also become very focused, and the attention has developed in a way that a skill has been brought to the fore. And sometimes it can seem like that's not what's happening. With these long retreat times, there can be a lot of suffering, actually, a lot of pain and difficulty. We want our minds to go in a particular direction. We want to experience peace, gain insights, but it's not always that way. It goes up and down. There's many peaks and valleys with this practice. I remember when I was starting out in the practice, the formal side just seemed like that was it. There was nothing more to that. Could just sit and walk all day. And then coming to Abhayagiri, there were times that just wasn't what was being done. There was maintaining the monastery and dealing with a certain amount of work. And similarly, I was just remembering that I think the first winter I was here, just before becoming an Anagarika, then we engaged in, there were so many work projects, it was unbelievable. There was 5, we were finishing 5 kutis ourselves. After contractors had come in and built some of them, we were finishing them. And one we started from scratch was the solar shed. Building a path of bricks out here. There were probably a lot of projects I couldn't even remember. And there was an encouragement to work in the afternoon, but it was optional. And I wasn't happy. And there was a lot of dukkha in my mind, a lot of, I just wanted it to end. And of course the main thought that was coming in, especially as a new member in the community, was that this wasn't right. There was something wrong here. And I should have a lot more time to meditate and be peaceful, and I didn't come here for all this work, and on the mind went with its justifications. And I think that there wasn't a lot of learning around right view. I had experienced a lot of peace in meditation, but I hadn't really brought in the Four Noble Truths. Because if I had, I would have recognized very much that I was suffering, and there was only one person who was causing that suffering. It wasn't the work monk at the time, although I really believed it was. The suffering was coming from within, and the sense that this wasn't justified, and it needed to change, and I'm very happy that I got through that. I'm still here. But it was so very real in the mind. And some people, some of the junior members couldn't cope with it, and they ended up leaving. Rather than seeing that it was a temporary thing. That it was impermanent. And in certain ways, if I had recollected this right view that the Buddha was talking about, if I had that as what was going through my mind rather than the complaints and the aversion, then there could have been a lot of learning that I had. So I was unfortunately sacrificing that learning. I was not seeing clearly. And I think it's just because at that time I didn't have the tools to be able to deal with that. And it's not as though before I came to the monastery that I wasn't engaging in hard work. It was a lot more actual mental work, and it could be quite difficult, even just getting through a day. I was a mental health counselor, and I remember I would just be mentally taxed, dealing with a lot of people that had a hard time coping with life. And so entering the monastery, it became like this sort of juxtaposition. It was supposed to be a sense that the monastery didn't have work. It was just cultivating, sitting in meditation the whole time, and I didn't have a real concept that, there was things to do, there's things to take care of. Taking care of our kutis, our dwellings, taking care of the grounds that we live on, taking care of these road requisites, becoming an anagarika and using the same whites each day and just needing to wash them and repair them. None of that had really entered my mind. So it's interesting how we can set that up. Sometimes we set up this sense of this is what true peace is. It's just sitting and walking all day long, somebody else will feed me, and that's all I need to do, and I'll be enlightened. And it's, the Buddha really teaches us to kind of question that as a sense of there's this thing called generosity. So you have to develop generosity. There are things of how we regard other people. We do this practice with other people. We want to try to engage in goodwill. We want to engage in how we are thinking of others. It'd be an interesting teaching if the Buddha, when he started his teaching, was just just ignore everybody around you. Don't have anything to do with them. Don't think about them. Don't. There's no obligations. There's no ways that you have to engage with other human beings. But the Buddha was, he was enlightened, so he saw clearly that there was a need. He actually restricted the monks and nuns once the order started from actually making their own food and providing for themselves, so that they would have that need to engage with others, to be part of other people's lives, and also so that they would have to have feedback. Because if they weren't being fed, they weren't taking care of their requisites, then somebody else would be doing that, and then therefore they would have to be worthy of those requisites. So engaging with all kinds of things in our lives is where the Buddha really encouraged us to kind of look as you got to kind of be prepared for everything. And another one of the monks had commented that this was quite hard work, going straight into an all-day, very physically engaging work. And he said, well, if I'm not really able to bring my mind to that and work on that and experience that, then what's this practice for? If it's only in a particular condition that I can manage this practice, then we're not really engaging in what the Buddha's teachings are for, why he's left them as a legacy to us. I think about sometimes when I do, complain to myself or why me or whatever it is, just the incredible hardships that the Buddha had in his life. After he decided to leave his quite privileged life, he let it all go. He really let so much go, and through his own asceticism at first, and then recognizing that wasn't the right path, the extremes that he went through, and then the hardships that he went through in his own determination for reaching the end of dukkha, the end of suffering, and that's the fact that he could have ended it right there. He could have said, "Okay, my work's done." But we're told he was encouraged by a god who came to visit him and said, no, don't finish your work, you need to help other people. And he said, right, okay, I can do that. So he engaged in this path of helping others for over 45 years, and some of the stories of just what he went through are just astounding. And he didn't give up. and somehow he just manifested this generosity of this offering of his life, because he had realized the end of suffering. But one doesn't have to, I think, realize the end in order to be generous, in order to be kind to others, in order to stretch oneself in whatever it is we might be able to do that's positive and comes from a wholesome aspect of our experience. So I think as I was beginning, I think the important part was this right view, this sense that there are these Four Noble Truths, and the Buddha really says try to look through a lens of those truths. Have that be your lens, rather than the woe is me and the self-centered ideas of what's important for me to do, and to guard my own sense of who and what I am, what my interests are. So we learn to extend that. I think that one of the beautiful things living in the monastery is we have so many good examples of that. Lumpur has exemplified that in his own life. The amount of giving that he has done, it's quite delightful just to think about that. I remember I made some comment to Lumpur and Ajahn in very early days when I was on a Garka or Samanera, and I was saying, you really did. It seems like you really chose to become abbots, to become senior monks who are really willing to lead and be helpful to the community, just out of so much generosity and kindness. And I think Lumpur said, or it was Ajahn, but they were both sitting there kind of laughing. They said, "No, we did it because we're stupid." And of course, that's not true. But they were not wanting to take on that. Oh yes, I did it because I'm such an extremely generous and incredibly excellent human being. Or to do it even for that, to have a motive around that. But that's where it's quite an incredibly lucky thing to have monks and nuns in the world that have stayed for so long in the robes and are giving, continuing to give. Because admittedly, there can often be this feeling of just I'd rather just crawl away and just not really engage or do the work I was just talking about. Just kind of pull away. But so much I find in my own practice that when I don't do that, when I try to stand up and do those things that I don't want to do, then there is a quite a wholesome feeling that arises out of that. And that's what's happened with this work, just continuing it each day, even though it's so tiring. Much more so tiring because we hadn't been engaging for the last 3 months in that kind of work. But it just feels really good to look out for others, to make sure that others are being safe, to help others when they're needing help with carrying things or taking something down. And so we recognize that if we open up to that generosity, that care of others, that sense of goodness, then it really has quite a positive effect. And this is the other aspect of right view that the Buddha wanted us to focus on, which was that of kamma. The fact that when we do positive actions, we engage with others in positive ways. Even just to have the thought, may the things that I'm doing, may I dedicate the goodness that arises out of that to others. Just thinking that. It allows the mind to be at ease and to rest and to not really feel sort of that we need to blame ourselves or feel guilty about something. We just kind of put down that mindset of it should just be how I want it to be. And we start to let go of that, and there's just such a much more enjoyable experience to be had in life. And I think I could clearly see that in others in the last few days. And it's harder to see, when we're living in solitude and engaging in our practice. Or might see our monastic friend with his brows furrowed, focusing, walking somewhere, and we are wishing each other well, but it's not. There's less of a connection during that time, and we're very much focused on our own minds, and that can create problems for us sometimes. And the whole aspect of the practice is to work on those problems, because the very focusing in itself can create a sort of self-centeredness if we're not careful. So that's why this kind of engagement we've been doing, I've just found so helpful. Because there comes out with that, what's been cultivated for so long, is that sense of that goodwill towards others, that wanting for others to not suffer, for them to have both mental and bodily well-being. But also, there's that sense of learning that I was talking about, and engaging with this practice is what it's really for. That ending of suffering, the ending of dukkha, and learning how to do that. And so it's just not always on the cushion, and we do need to really challenge ourselves sometimes and step up. It was quite encouraging to see Lumpur Pasno, Ajahn Cunda, participating with us, and ripping up wood and pulling out nails, and just that sense of communal well-being that comes from willing to lend a hand, but also that continued sense of learning is so important, that we can keep moving our minds towards it, rather than, as I was talking about earlier with my practice when I was quite junior, to just kind of focus on the negative and the I'd rather do my own thing, and this is not what a monastery is for, and somebody else should do this work. And at the same time, that first year that I was here, the work wasn't ending. It was continuing on every day. And some people did get burned out, and actually it went too far. And Lumpur Pasno actually wasn't here. But then there was some wisdom that came, and it said, okay, I think that's enough for now. And we ended that period in the monastery. It was about a few months. And I think it was really good. It was really good for me to go through that, to experience that. And it's very rare that we practice that way in the monastery, because it then means sort of an end of seclusion for us for, I think, too long of a period of time. But for short periods of time, I just find it so valuable. And also that I went through that while I was here. And I went through those mind states that were, encouraging me to leave, or encouraging me to just believe in my thoughts that what I was experiencing was just wrong. It wasn't correct. Rather than saying, oh, well, maybe it's this dukkha that's incorrect. Maybe there's a way out of that. And it doesn't have to do with these conditions so much. So in the end, I think I was quite grateful for having gone through that period of time in the monastery. And it's something that I now, at the time, I don't remember I didn't have very fond feelings about it, but now I look at it as, wow, it's kind of a different person. That's really, there has been quite a lot of changes since then. So there can be a real delight in having gone through that and enjoyed that period of my life from a retrospective view. So I just want to also express my appreciation to the community for seeing the care and attention and willingness to engage in this kind of work. It was obviously quite beautiful to see all of the community members during the retreat, such an open time, and to really see people putting a lot of effort into their practice, moving slowly, more quietly, being considerate of others in the monastery. And it was a very inspiring time. I think the winter retreat always is. And we had an amazing group of laymen who were taking care of us, and that was quite special. And so the thing that's coming up for me is just a lot of gratitude, and that we use a word called samaki, and that's sort of a harmonious way of the Sangha members being with each other, and so it's really felt that way for me, and I've quite enjoyed it. I mean, there's at times when it's not enjoyable. But the overall feeling is just a sense of goodness and wholesomeness. And I think the more that we can try to work with that with our practice, then it's just so much more beneficial to bring that in, rather than kind of having an attitude about formal meditation as being the only true, real activity where one can learn or one can have peace. And so for people who are living outside of a monastery, this is just the normal thing. For a construction worker, they might be engaging with that each day. But are they reflecting on the Four Noble Truths? And if they are, then I hope that helps them. But if not, it can feel like quite a burden. I guess it just all really depends on the attitude. So I've been a bit tired, and this has affected my mind. So if there's anything that's come out that's been helpful, then please take that with you tonight. Otherwise, I will end it here.